At 9:47 a.m., every ocean disappeared. No warning, no tsunami, just gone. Beneath the sea, an ancient city was waiting. No one had seen it for thousands of years, but they had only 10 minutes before it woke up. 3 days before the disaster, this city was full of life. But beneath those peaceful waves, something had already awakened. It was just another ordinary morning. Cars filled the roads. People followed their daily routine, completely unaware that the greatest disaster in history was only moments away. Then, something impossible happened. The ocean slowly began to pull back, exposing the seabed. At first, everyone stood there in silence, trying to understand what they were seeing. Within minutes, hundreds of people rushed toward the beach. No one had ever seen the ocean disappear like this. Even the authorities couldn't explain what was happening. Military helicopters arrived within minutes. Scientists searched for answers, but what they discovered beneath the ocean would change everything. Then, the scanners detected something impossible. Deep beneath the ocean floor, a massive object was moving. Suddenly, the ground began to shake. Deep beneath the seabed, something enormous was trying to break free. Then, something moved beneath the cracks. One enormous eye slowly opened, and everyone froze in terror. Before anyone could react, a colossal claw began rising from beneath the ocean floor. Whatever was waking up wasn't human. Then, the impossible happened. The creature began rising from beneath the earth, and every second revealed something even more terrifying. The creature kept rising, and with every second, its true size became even more terrifying. Then the monster released its first terrifying roar, and the entire coastline trembled beneath its power. With unimaginable power, the ancient guardian unleashed its first energy beam, shaking the skies and changing the world forever. Within minutes, the military launched a full-scale emergency response. Every available force was deployed, but no one knew if it would be enough. The order was finally given. Every missile, every jet, every weapon locked onto the giant, hoping to stop the impossible. The missiles struck their target, but as the smoke slowly cleared, an unbelievable truth began to emerge. The relentless assault achieved nothing, and through the fading smoke, the ancient guardian stood completely unharmed. Then, the impossible happened. The ancient guardian rose from the ocean, revealing its true, terrifying size. With its first step, the earth itself began to break apart. Then the guardian unleashed a roar so powerful, even the sky seemed to tremble. Humanity launched everything it had, but the Guardian answered with a power no one had ever witnessed. Then, with a single swing, the Guardian unleashed a force that changed the battlefield in an instant. One strike, and the Earth itself began to break apart. With no other choice, humanity launched its final defense. Then, everything fell silent. The Guardian was preparing something far more devastating. Then, the Guardian released a force unlike anything humanity had ever witnessed. Within seconds, the battlefield had become a graveyard of steel and fire. But then, everyone realized the battle was never its true objective. As the Guardian approached, the forgotten temple finally awakened. The gates had finally opened, revealing a power that had remained hidden for thousands of years. Then, something even older answered the Guardian's call. The Guardian had never come to destroy humanity. It had come to answer an ancient command. The Guardian wasn't humanity's greatest threat. It had come to warn them of something far more terrifying. Then the sea began to shake. Whatever had been sleeping beneath the ocean for thousands of years was finally waking up. The abyss had opened, and for the first time in thousands of years, its eyes were awake. For thousands of years, it had remained imprisoned beneath the ocean. Now it was finally rising. It wasn't just another monster. It was the ancient titan that legends had feared for thousands of years. For the first time in history, the two ancient titans stood face to face. With a single strike, the battle that would decide the fate of the world had begun. Their collision unleashed a force so powerful, even the ocean could no longer remain calm. But then, the ancient Titan revealed a power the Guardian had never faced before. One devastating strike, and the Guardian had fallen. Humanity's last protector was losing. Just when everyone believed the Guardian had fallen, its true power finally awakened. The Guardian had never been an ordinary protector. This was its true form. Then, they realized the Titan was never the final enemy. Something far greater had finally awakened. The sky itself began to shatter, as something beyond imagination reached into our world. Just one touch, and the heavens trembled. For the first time, the Guardian stood against a force of nature. In that moment, ancient enemies became Earth's final hope. The first clash was only a warning. The true battle had not even begun. Beyond the sky, the true ruler had been watching all along. A single command echoed across the heavens, and even the oceans fell silent. The Guardian wasn't chosen, he was created. Then, the Guardian did something no one expected. He refused to strike. For the first time in history, even the ancient Titan chose to fight for the Guardian. The shield that had never fallen before began to break. When the second eye opened, reality itself began to break. Then, the battlefield fell silent. Even time seemed afraid to move. It was never a battle. It was a choice that would decide the fate of every world. But the Guardian refused both destinies and created a path that had never existed before. For the first time since the birth of the universe, the Creator bowed. The war was over, but the universe had not spoken its final word.